The Gamecocks fell to the Arkansas Razorbacks 44-30 on Saturday, but the loss was costly for the Gamecocks in more ways than one. And joining me to break that down is Locked On Gamecocks podcast host Andrew Lyon. Andrew, we'll get to the Arkansas game in a bit, but let's talk about the news we heard on Monday. Starting defensive end Jordan Strachan and starting inside linebacker Mokaba, they're both out for the rest of the season with ACL injuries. We'll get to Mo in a bit, but let's focus our attention on Jordan now. How big of a loss is this for the Gamecock pass rush?
Well, there's no doubt that the Gamecocks are going to be losing a little bit of juice here in the pass rush with the loss of Jordan Strachan. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was tied for the lead in FBS football in sacks in 2020 with 10.5 sacks. This was a guy that was a rotational piece last season behind Kingsley Nabari, who now plays for the Green Bay Packers, and it sort of slid into that edge outside linebacker position on South Carolina's defense. This was a guy that the defensive coaching staff had a lot of high praise for in the offseason, a guy that worked hard to lose a little bit of weight and really be able to fly around and play faster at that edge position. And as a guy that brings some solid technique, but with Jordan Strachan going out, Gilbert Edmond, it seems like, is now going to be the man that's going to have to slide in there. Edmond is a solid technician as a rotational defensive end, but can he hold up playing 50 some-odd snaps in an SEC football game throughout this really tough schedule the Gamecocks have? We're going to have to find out, but either way you slice it, this is definitely a big loss, especially in the pass rushing department for South Carolina.
Yeah, Andrew, for sure. And to add on with Jordan, he leads the team currently in tackles for loss this season with 3. So, yeah, like you mentioned, big loss in the pass rush department. All right, now let's talk about Mokaba's injury. Mo came in. We really didn't think he was going to be the starter at linebacker for the Gamecocks, but he came in. He was playing pretty good, had 8 tackles through the first 2 games. How big of a loss is Mo going to be? And also the guy who's going to replace him, we saw, is going to be Sherrod Green, who we know has starting experience. He was the Gamecock starting linebacker last year, but he also has an injury history, right? So talk to me about your thoughts on Sherrod Green stepping in for Mo in Mo's absence.
Well, obviously, with Sherrod Green stepping in there for Mokaba, again, a really tough loss there for South Carolina, but Sherrod Green at least brings an experience factor. This is a guy that has played 5 to 6 years of college football, so he's someone that's been around the block a few times, and you definitely cannot replace that. But like you mentioned, Chandler, Sherrod Green has had an injury history. He's had his seasons cut short both of the last 2 years, 2 season-ending injuries, and he's someone that I've heard has been banged up all throughout fall camp, which is a big question mark because now we're going to be asking Sherrod Green to go out there and play the majority of the snaps at that middle linebacker position. Can he hold up that burden? Can he withstand all of that? Can he withstand the volume of reps now that he's going to have to play? His backup now is going to be true freshman Stone Bland, who, while a very highly touted dual sport athlete out of Mississippi, it's pretty tough to have a true freshman be that next man up now at a position like middle linebacker, which is so important in terms of communication for the box defenders in Clayton White's defense. So again, same deal with Jordan Strachan, really big loss here because now the depth gets a little bit thinner at that middle linebacker position.
Obviously, linebacker play is very important in the stopping the run department, and that Gamecock rush defense, Andrew, no other way to slice it. They have to be a lot better. You got the defending national champs coming to town in the Georgia Bulldogs. The run defense for the Gamecocks, they gave up 200 yards against Georgia State, 295 against the Razorbacks. What will the Gamecocks have to do in order to at least compete against the Georgia Bulldogs, who are averaging 130 yards per game through their first 2 games of this season?
Well, honestly, Chandler, in terms of what the Gamecocks defensive front has to do in order to stop the run better, I think that there's a couple of things they need to do. One, they need to take it one play at a time. Do not let what down it is on that drive dictate how it is you are playing. The Gamecocks against Arkansas, I thought, did fine on first down and sometimes second down, but third down, which is termed the money down by a lot of defensive coaches because it's the most important down for defense, you can get off the field. The Gamecocks just did not get off the field enough on third down against Arkansas, which allowed the Razorbacks to have long sustained drives. And the Razorbacks, of course, as we saw, is really good running the football, especially behind KJ Jefferson and Raheem Rocket Sanders. And over the course of the entire game, it just wore down South Carolina's defensive front. The guys have just got to be able to get off the field so that they don't get tired. They're going to have to gang tackle. Guys need to rally to the football. They cannot just assume that one of their teammates is going to make the tackle every single time. Everybody's got to play together as a cohesive unit. I have no doubt that they gave 1,000% effort against Arkansas, but against guys like KJ Jefferson and Raheem Rocket Sanders, who are really solid SEC players, you cannot just go in there and arm tackle them. You've got to wrap up. You got to drive your legs, all the fundamental aspects of playing defense. The Gamecocks are going to have to do better in that department, especially against a team like Georgia, who they're going to be playing this coming weekend.
Gotcha. All right, Andrew. Well, I'm looking forward to doing this again next week. Hopefully, we hope it'll be after a Gamecocks win. But if it's not, you kind of understand the Georgia Bulldogs, they're the national champs, top-ranked team in the country. But yeah, hopefully, we both can hope, Andrew, that the Gamecocks will win. And yeah, Andrew, really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me. If people want to listen to the Locked On Gamecocks podcast, how can they do it?
You can look up the Locked On Gamecocks podcast on YouTube and find my channel there. You can also find me on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Odyssey, or wherever you get your podcasts daily on audio.